100 centum sto 100 son. That is 100 in Dutch, Latin, Polish, Spanish, and French, and this is the 100th episode of the Empowered Podcast. All right, welcome back, everybody. You know, last week's episode, it was 99. It was called How to Write a Book, Get It Published, and Become a #1 Best-Selling Author with my friend Jimmy Burgess. If you go to the iTunes store, if you go to ellerywells.com/iTunes, I think it will take you right there. It took a while to get listed there. I don't know why. If you know, let me know so I can either make the change, do an update, whatever. But it is, at one point, if you look at that popularity scale there on the right side of iTunes, you guys made episode 99. It was all the way to the right. It was all the way to popular. And right now, just scrolling through as of this moment, 97 and 98 are pretty dang close. Or 99 are pretty dang close, with 98 being still extremely popular. And that makes me happy, guys, because that was a solo episode, number 98, how to identify your avatar, have more focus, and what was the rest of it, and make a bigger impact. And I truly believe that when we focus, we can have more of an impact. And I've used this analogy before. It's like when you have, an open palm, you could slap somebody, but if you clench your fist, if you close your fist and you focus that force, you can punch somebody a whole lot harder than you can slap them. So keep that in mind as you're going out about your business. Anyway, in today's episode, I am with Erik Fisher, and I've had Erik Fisher on before, but one of my members, another expert's call here, another member was asking about how to find that work-life balance. These are entrepreneurs, and you might fit into this category yourself. If you're an entrepreneur and you are trying to figure out how to start a business in the margins of your life, in that extra time. Haha, we all laugh, right? Oh, if only I had extra time. But here's the thing. We all have the exact same amount of time in the day that a billionaire would have as a homeless guy on the street. And before I forget, I want you to go over to ellerywells.com and scroll down and you find my blog there. And I've got a post. It's from this week. And it's been shared over 31 times already today. Apparently people are really liking that too. But it's called How to Be More Effective, Enjoy Life, and Accomplish Your Goals. The title might change because I split test those. But the content is all about two key things to being more effective. Whether that's having your avatar defined, whether that's finding extra time to work on your business, or write blog posts, record podcasts, write your book. And I talk about what those two things are in that post. If you want the short link, if you're sitting there at your desk or at your browser, and you want to type it in, you can go to ellerywells.com/effective, and you'll see what I'm talking about there. You'll see the first thing that you've got to have if you want to be more effective is a system. And the second thing, not necessarily in that order, is purpose. And I list out 26 different ways to manage yourself and be more effective. And that's what we talk about in today's episode. It just kind of lines up. I didn't really do it on purpose, but it lines up with this podcast episode today. This is actually an interview I did back in October of 2015 with Erik. Life as an entrepreneur, how tough it can be, and how to make it work. And again, this is a condensed version. If you want the full thing with all of the video and behind-the-scenes Q&A that went on with the members, please go and become a membership site member. You can get started for just $1. It's absolutely worth your time. I mean, what's the value of $1? I don't think you can get much more value for 100 pennies. Hey, 100 pennies for 100 episodes. I don't know how much more value you can get for $1 than joining my membership site, because you'll get full access to this call. But here's what we talked about. Derek asked, what are the top 3 tools to use daily to keep your busy life in order? I think he was talking about like Trello or Asana or some of these time management apps that you can use. Derek also asked if Twitter is dying and what other tools you can use, like podcast for your podcast, to possibly pass traditional radio, because of course Erik Fisher is a podcaster. Rusty asked about being in the military and finding time, and he understands that we all sacrifice the little things now so we can have the awesome things later. You've heard me talking about saying no to the good things so you can say yes to the great and amazing things. Rocco asked about deciphering different distractions. What is just mental resistance, and how do you balance that with testing and trying things that work and experimenting with failure? It's a great call, guys. I know you're going to enjoy this call with Erik Fisher from Beyond the To-Do List. Stick around. I've got a couple announcements after the episode about what to expect, how we're going to move forward, and I want to share those with you. I can't wait. So let's go right into the episode. Today's guest is a productivity expert, a friend of mine that I got to meet in 2014 and interview him at the podcast pavilion at New Media Expo. So he's a productivity expert. He's got a podcast. He does the social media and community for Social Media Examiner, and he's pretty much the expert on getting things done. So let's welcome to the show and to the call, Erik Fisher.
Thanks for having me.
What's up, man? How you doing?
How you doing? I'm good.
Dude, man, I posted on Facebook today. Someone, I think, cut down my tree in my backyard. What? I know.
Why?
I don't know. It was we planted these little bitty trees, and it had leaves on it. It was the only one with leaves, and I think someone cut it. It's just too clean of lines to have been an animal. I don't know. That's totally off topic.
That's so weird.
But I'm still bitter about it.
Yeah. Obviously, you wouldn't be bringing it up.
I know. I caught a glimpse out the window here in the office, and I was like, you know what? That's still bugging me. So anyway, Erik, thanks for coming and talking to the membership site today. I don't remember exactly who it was, but someone asked for you by name. They said, I would love to have Erik Fisher. I think he mentioned Beyond the To-Do List, and how do I fit all of this stuff in my life? I think it might have been Derek who asked. I'm not sure, but if it is Derek, he just had his first kid, and he just also signed his first client, first paid client. So he got a lot going on. A lot of the members have a lot going on. They've got families, they've got jobs, and I want to learn from you as well, but we all want to learn from you. How do you balance it all? So give us maybe a 10,000-foot view of what you're doing now, and then we'll dive into how we got there.
Sure. Let's see here. Let me start by saying this caveat, that any amount of balance that I've learned to do has been by trial and error, and by adding on too much and then realizing it and then scaling back a bit and deciding what's most important. You got to know that first off, because that's where we all are. That's where we start from. Is we have certain things that we've either chosen the responsibility of, or if you're in a day job and they then give you responsibilities, you then owe them that. So and then we have stuff we want to do that's our own, that we want to take on, and then we kind of, anyway, you know where I'm going. And
then a new video game comes out, and you're like, how am I going to make time for this?
I know, right? I mean, I'm seriously, this new baby's cutting way into my video game time.
There you go, exactly.
I've been there. That's not the case right now. In fact, right now I'm not playing games at all, but I don't miss it. I'm too busy with other stuff. But I've been in that scenario. Trust me. Let's see. Yeah, 10,000-foot view. Let's go with the thing that takes up probably the biggest amount of my time right now, or at least that's what it seems like. And I actually, let me swap it. Family first. Let's go there. I was going to say Social Media Examiner, but what some of us don't remember is that even if we have a day job, you don't spend the majority of your time at that day job. You actually spend it home with your family and friends and I think we forget that sometimes. We think, oh, 40 hours a week. Well, it's only 40 hours a week or more, depending upon what you're doing. But yeah, that's the thing for me. So I've been married. I should probably have that answer quicker than I just said, but
let's put you on the spot. When is your anniversary?
It's August 10th, 2002. So it's 13 years of just a couple months ago. So we've been married for 13 years, known each other for like 14-ish. I have 2 kids, a daughter who's going to turn 11 in a couple months and a son who just turned 4. They take up a lot of time.
I bet. In
a good way. And yeah, so that's really key right there. It's just to remember that any other amount of accomplishment that I have doesn't really matter as much if I don't have them along for the ride. And more so, maybe a paradigm shift here is they're not along on my ride. It's our ride together as a family. And sometimes it's easy to forget that too. So, so that comes first and foremost. And that means sometimes I get up early, so I have my me time, so I'm in a good place to then help them and serve them before I go off and do other things throughout the day. Second biggest piece I would say is Social Media Examiner. I'm community manager there. I work in coordinating and helping out with all the different social networks that they're on live blab shows, on where we talk about the new latest and crazy news and social media that broke that week. I'm on their Facebook. I'm on their Twitter. I'm their main guy on their Twitter account. What else? It's a lot of behind the scenes stuff. It's a lot of meetings. It's a lot of strategizing, testing. So that's and that's flexible. Again, it's not a set 40 hours a week. I am salaried. That wasn't how it was originally. I used to work at a university. It's been a year and a half now that I've been with Social Media Examiner. Mike kind of handpicked me.
Oh, cool.
So that was fun. Then there's the podcast. That's the part-time job at this point on the side. It's been 3 years in the making. Or in the continuation. It's just past its 3rd birthday here back in August of 2015. It's started in August 2012. I've got about 115 episodes out as of right now. A lot of different conversations with a lot of different people. Coordinating that is a bit tricky sometimes, but I've gradually moved into batch processing that, where I will do a large chunk of about a month or 2 of shows and then process them through, and then I've got them, and then my margin works better.
What's your schedule on that, Eric? It doesn't seem like it's quite one a week.
Yeah, and it has been at times. It's actually more now. It's going back to once a week, I should say. It's been crazy a little recently. I would say that in the 3 years, it's always been my aim to be at the 1 a week level. But once in a while, I've got to take some time off from that show. I'm sorry. I just have to. I think we all need to do that.
Do you I see a recent trend, and someone had suggested it to me because I'm looking at what I need to do with my show next, trying to figure out not only what I want to do, but really what's going to move the needle for the listener each and every episode. So I'm kind of up in the air in this kind of limbo period. What is something with your podcast that has really worked? Do you think it comes down to having that consistent weekly schedule, or?
I know this. There are listeners who, if there's not an episode out there consistently, they ask, where is it? That's a good feeling. Like, you want people to want you back like that. So I'm committing to that more than I ever did before.
What do you think about seasons?
I've debated about this with other podcasters, and I've wondered, is there merit to that? I think there is. I think that if I were to do a theme, like if I were to say, hey, I'm going to talk to, and I've actually thought about this, what if I get a bunch of different people who created all those different task management systems out there, OmniFocus, Todoist, Nosby, if I listed off a bunch of them and I did them all, and then I put them out there all at once as a season, that'd be cool. It's all the same theme. I think there's nothing wrong with that. I think other people would say, well, having one new consistent episode out there is going to get you more downloads per episode and not break subscriptions and things like that. And I kind of hear what they're saying when it comes to that. So I would almost treat it as seasons, but still episodically do it like how they do it on TV. They shoot the whole season and then they air one at a time. So
well, as you're asking this, I'm thinking, what does anybody really know? And not in a sarcastic way, but you get Netflix that will come out. You know, we used to have 22, 23, 24 episode seasons, and they lasted 6 months. And then we had the fall hiatus. We had a break over Christmas. And what happens to all of that? And then the writer's strike back in 2004. That's when I stopped watching Lost, by the way. And then you've got Netflix in the last couple of years who comes out, and I have to assume they've had massive success with just dropping 13 episodes, which is almost what HBO does. They do 10 to 13. So this is not exactly what I had planned on asking you about, but for someone, I mean, being a podcaster in 2012, you're almost the old man in the room when it comes, I mean, not quite. There's people who have podcasted longer, but 2012 was before this major.
Well, I was doing, most people don't know this, but I was actually one half of a comedy duo podcast back in 2007.
Is this where I'm supposed to ask you to say something funny?
No.
Not at all.
Nope. December 2007, my show, We're Both Right, it was me and my friend, and we'd argue and we'd talk about stuff. And that's all it was, but we were named by iTunes as one of the top 10 new comedy podcasts that year. I forget that sometimes. So, I mean, I've been listening to podcasts since I was in my cubicle summer 2005 when iTunes added it.
Wow.
So, I don't know. Here's the thing. To bring it back around to productivity as a podcaster, you got to do what works best for you. If you think you have to have one episode per week or one episode per day, you're right. But at the same time, if your audience isn't going to listen to every single one of them, then maybe you're better off. I mean, for my money, I'd rather have once a week with a really good show than once a day with okay shows, because listening to enough okay shows means eventually I will be okay with not listening to you anymore.
Yeah. That's a powerful statement. Well, let's go ahead and get back. Sorry for my tree and podcast derailment there. Let's pull up a question from my friend Rusty. Rusty and I met in Vegas a couple weeks ago at the Thrive conference, which is incredible. And Rusty says, thank you for taking time to read this question. He says, I'm in the military, so I have a full-time job and I cannot leave. But I've chosen to hustle on the side to prepare for my transition out of the military in 2018. My question is, we all have to sacrifice and say no to the little things so we can say yes to the big things later in life. But one of those big things is my family. What is your advice to balancing family, the side hustle, and a full-time job?
Have conversations with your wife, first and foremost. I mean, if you've got the full-time job and you've got the family and you've got the side hustle, and I've had to have this conversation with my wife, is to say, hey, my idea was basically I want to treat the podcast finally as an actual part-time job. Well, in order to do that, we needed to be on the same page. In other words, like it had to be hey, Daddy's going to go work this evening for a couple hours to get ahead on the side job, and that just needs to be the way it is. And ultimately, that's what it comes down to. I mean, it's not about planning to be where you're at right now. It's about planning to be where you want to be. And so if you aren't talking together about that and how you get to that and how you all get to that, not just you, then, because that brings it back to what I was talking about earlier. It's all the same ride. You're all on the ride together. It's not your ride. It's the family car,
So back in 2007, that would have been 8 years ago. Your daughter would have been 3. And then when you started Beyond the To-Do List, your current show, she would have been 7, 8-ish, and your son would have been 1. How do you pull yourself away from a new baby, newish, and say, this is amazing family time. I want to cherish time with my young son, but I still have to focus on the long game? Because I've got some clients right now who have young kids, and we don't have any kids, but I can understand wanting to spend as much time with them as possible.
Yeah.
How do you say, okay, I have to step away from this so I can do the things today that will get me where I want to go 2 or 3 years from now?
Again, it's almost as if you give yourself permission. Well, you get permission from the wife first. I'm going to be honest, like you do. You can't, I mean, you give yourself permission to not be there some of the time, as well as your wife giving you that permission. It's you mutually, or not mutually, yes, mutually, collaboratively, both of you saying, this is a season. Let me get this thing up and running. It's not going to be this way forever. How do we make it work right now till we get to that future point? And I can say some of the things that it took was I would work on my show. Like I was working on my podcast at 5 a.m. sometimes, often actually, to get it up and running and consistent and going. I was up from 5 to 7. I didn't record any interviews then because, again, nobody was going to talk to me then unless they were overseas. But that's when I was up. Like that's when I was up reading a book or listening to somebody else, them on somebody else's show to take notes, ideas of new questions to ask, my own thoughts. 2 hours. I mean, if you think about it, that's one way. Like if you get yourself to bed at 10 o'clock, dude, seriously, like get to bed at 10, get a good night's sleep till 5. That's about 7 hours.
That's 7 hours.
You'll be good. And you'll meet all of the responsibilities, but then suddenly you've got 2 extra hours every Monday through Friday, not to mention if you add in the weekend too. You got 10 extra hours right there. That's 1/4 of a work week. Or in a month, that's 1 full work week that you've then allotted to this other thing. You might be able to do that for a while. You can't do it forever. Maybe you'd have to, lose an hour here or there or definitely sleep in on the weekends. But that's where you find that extra time is, and again, even if you're not a morning person, you train yourself to be because that's what's required of you at that season. Hear what I'm saying? A season to then get something up and running, and then it's running, and there you go.
That's encouraging, but also I think tough to hear for even myself, who I'm not a morning person either. But I do work a lot. But here's something interesting that I heard, Erik. I'm pretty sure you're familiar with Gary Vaynerchuk.
Mm-hmm.
Gary Vaynerchuk. He was also at this Thrive conference, and it was Friday night that he was there talking to our group. We got like 5 hours with Gary. It was incredible.
Wow, that's great.
It was a little bit less. Anyway. He said something that I don't know if it shocked everybody else in the room. It totally shocked me. He talked about the sacrifice that he was making with his family to be there. And he talked till like 11 o'clock at night, was flying out at 6 a.m. to go back from Vegas to, I guess, New York. He said if he had missed, that would have been the first Saturday this entire year he had not been home. How is this guy that's so busy? I mean, none of us are as busy as Gary is. I mean, he's always doing something, writing books and all this stuff. And that would have been the first Saturday. So he's obviously making and dedicating time to spend with his family in the midst of being so incredibly busy. But he knows that, or what he also said is that when he is there, and I think you might agree with this too, Erik, as much as you are about scheduling things, is that when you're there, when you are dedicating time to your family, whether it's just a spouse or spouse and kids, you got to be 110% present.
Yeah, that's it. That's one of the key things too is, and I suspect that's what Gary's doing is the reason he's able to stop for so long and so hard when he's not with family is that when he's with family, he's not hustling. I assume. I don't know. I'd love the chance to ask him myself. I've listened to all his shows. From what I'm hearing is that he's recharging at that point and he's savoring those moments. And that's really, in effect, carrying him through. It's giving him momentum, basically, or true energy when it comes time to do the hustle, because he knows what he's doing it for.
Yeah, and he, like you, he mentioned having that conversation, and that's something that I have also talked with my wife, Ashley, about. When you lock yourself away in this office or wherever you are right now, our spouses have to know what we're doing. There has to be results, but they also have to know what we're doing in here, because not that it's necessarily weird, but we're saying no to that to come into this room, close the door, lock ourselves in here for 3 or 4 hours and come out. There has to be less mystery, and they have to know somewhat what we're doing.
Yeah.
Couple random questions for you. What's your social media platform of choice right now?
I think where I'm really seeing more traction again finally is Twitter. I think a lot of people see noise and it's so fast and furious, but I get a lot of feedback there. I get more feedback there than I do on Facebook.
Really? Okay.
And I don't know. It's what I like the most right now. It may change, but for the most part, it's always been my thing.
Okay. That'll bring us into a question from that Derek submitted. Do you think Twitter's dying?
I don't think it's dying. I think in a lot of ways, they had layoffs, and that's not always a bad thing if you're saying no to some stuff so that you can be good at the stuff you're good at. So I think they're trying to do that. I think, like a lot of people have thought, they've quote unquote lost their way, some of the way that they've been doing stuff previous to now or recent. Who knows? I don't know. I see them doing good. I see them doing good things in the future.
Blab and Periscope. What do you think about those two things? I know you mentioned Blab. I did a podcast about Periscope. What are your thoughts on those two?
Blab's fun. I do a weekly Blab with 2 other guys, all about productivity, every Wednesday at 11 Eastern. Periscope's fun too. I haven't had the time to get back into that. I was doing it a bit. Then my workspace kind of shifted. I'm now out in the upper loft of my garage, so it's like this nice open. I've got this. What is it? It's curtains back here behind me, so that you can't see that like there's stuff in the rest of the room. But anyway, you can see it over here. There's plenty. It's nice. It's private. I'm at a standing desk that I can do here. I'm not in my bedroom. So,
did you? Another random thing. Did you see this thing that people are sharing on Facebook about the laying down desk?
Yeah, I saw that in passing. I was just like, that's not going to happen.
That just seems like so awful.
There's no way that's going to work. I can't get anything done sometimes sitting. So,
well, it's like I've seen these kind of memes floating around where it's like caveman, as we kind of evolve,
right?
And then we start hunching over because we're looking at our phones, whatever. And then the last scene is us kind of reclined back with this wraparound computer monitor. And there was there was a movie in the last few years about that where people were just blobs sitting on these.
Oh, it was it's the little robot Pixar.
Was it WALL-E?
WALL-E, yeah, on the spaceship where they're all in these blob chairs. Yeah, I feel like that sometimes. Sitting all day,
It just seems like that's what this. It's that next step in these lay down chairs. I don't have a stand up desk. I've thought about getting one, but
I don't stand all day. I can't. I've got a stool. Well, it's like a stool chair back here that I'll pull up, and then I can slide this thing here. If you could see it, anyway, I bought it. I built it, I should say, from IKEA parts. So it's pretty cool.
Well, just a follow-up question to that. is exercise and health important to productivity, or is it a distraction that's keeping you from doing something that you should be doing?
Exercise. Here's the thing: you only get so much time. So sometimes it's like, man, if I wasn't sitting here, actually behind this curtain, there's also a treadmill. Hey, podcasting listening time is something I've seen less and less as I've gotten busier.
Mm-hmm.
Treadmill's my podcast time, So you just got to fit it in. Like now what's happening is instead of me getting up at 5 or 6 to do work, stuff's in a different season for me. So now it's like, well, crap, I'm trying to pull the Cliff Ravenscraft and change things around finally. And that's when I do that.
Man, I saw a picture of him on Instagram, and I saw him in person in a podcast movement in, what was that, August? And then just a few weeks ago, it's like, holy crap, that doesn't even look like the same guy anymore.
He's been on this track for about a year now, which is more than he ever did back when he did a couple different rounds of this. So I'm super proud. He's only about 2 hours south of me, and I saw him a couple months ago. And yeah, so I'm just like, Cliff, I want to pull a Cliff Ravenscraft.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's got the hashtag train with Cliff. Yeah. I'm proud of him.
Yeah.
And he's a super cool dude. Another question from Derek: top 3 tools you use daily to keep your busy life in order, Eric?
I'll say this. One of them is not something that keeps my life in order per se, but it helps me get stuff done quicker when I have something I have to do. It's called Focus at Will.
Music, right?
Yeah. What it does is it plays, what's the best way to put this? It's soundscapes, and it's not, like, ooh, like I listen to like almost techno stuff half the time because I love it. Like it's like, it's not, it gets you pumped up enough that, like, you've seen those horses where they've got the blinders on. Mm-hmm. That's what it does to my inner mind. Like, it's like blinders to where I'm only looking at what I need to do right now, and any other thoughts in my head kind of go away, and I'm just nailing it. Like, I'm just getting done what I need to get done. And I'll set it for 20, 30 minutes or an hour, and I'll find that suddenly it's like, ding, and it's done. And I'm like, well, I just got a ton done. I just cleaned out my email inbox. I just did. And so, I mean, it's well worth it. You pay about $45 for a year, but when you break that down over how much I use it and how much more I get done with it than without it, it's well worth paying for that versus like coffee. Seriously.
So if you guys have not heard of Focus at Will, it is essentially, it's science applied to music. So it's a little bit of psychology and brain waves where your brain responds to certain like beats per minute, for example. And it's supposed to help you focus. I think it works. I did a trial run of that, and I liked it, but I have a whole playlist of music that I've bought that's piano and classical music, so I usually just listen to that. A lot of times that'll work too, depending upon what you're doing. Once in a while, I just got to crack some real music too. So yeah, I've got 2 playlists, basically like work and play, and the work one is there's no lyrics, it's just instruments, and it does help. So it's funny that I think you answer questions. That's like your personality type. Did we do that, Eric, when we first? Does that sound familiar?
I don't remember doing that, but
well, there's like a ADD playlist, and it's like all over the place.
It's like nails on a chalkboard to me.
Yeah, but I wonder if that would work.
For some people, that'll work. Some people, that's what they need.
Yeah, so it would be worth trying. Let's knock out Derek's last question. Podcast in the Google Play Store. Will that finally be the slingshot needed for podcasting to pass traditional radio? What do you think about it in the Google Play Store? And Derek's question about it passing terrestrial radio.
I don't know if it needs to pass terrestrial radio, to be honest. I think we're still at that place where cars need to catch up. car makers, whatever. We're seeing it. It's starting to get there with CarPlay and whatever. I mean, heck, so back up. It's always good. The podcasting is better known. It's great that one of the other mobile phone makers, this is an iPhone, sorry. It's not Google.
I'll show my Galaxy S6.
There you go. Yeah, there you go. Do you listen to podcasts on your Google phone? And if so, how easy has it been? That's my question to you.
It's a yes and no question. Since I started working from home almost 2 years ago, I'm rarely in the car, so I don't listen to a whole lot of podcasts anymore.
Yeah.
So that's kind of yeah. But other than that, yeah, it's Stitcher. I mean, if
there you go. Okay. See, but that's a whole other thing. Like, it's a whole other ecosystem outside of the one that's native to the phone.
It is, but the podcasting app, and everyone was like, "Oh yeah, this is fantastic," but no one has ever said, "Oh, I love the podcasting app." Not to me, anyway.
Yeah, you mean on Apple?
Yeah, right.
I think for a while there it was good, and then it got better, and then I think the last iteration it's not as great. But what is cool is I use Overcast. That's my favorite.
It's the app for it?
Mm-hmm, Overcast on iPhone. And what's cool is with the iOS 9, as soon as I get into my car, it syncs Bluetooth, and I plug, I stick it on the dashboard. It syncs Bluetooth, and because of that, it knows I'm in my car because I'm syncing that device. And so down in the corner, it shows the Overcast app. Like, it's smart. It knows, oh, he's in the car. He'll probably listen to a podcast like he does. So it's learned my habits. Okay. So that's really upped my listening. I don't really know that. Oh, so that's great, but it'd be great to have cars like with built-in, and we're getting there. Cars with built-in Bluetooth, automatic, and all that kind of stuff. We're getting there. I don't really care about terrestrial radio or not. I listen to it once in a while. I turn it on. I flip through the oldies, whatever. But I don't think podcasts needs to pass terrestrial radio to be good or, beneficial. It's not a competition in my mind. Really.
I would agree. It's not a competition. And I would maybe answer Derek's question with some numbers. I mean, I don't know how many podcasts are out there. I don't know how many devices that are out there that will play podcasts. But let's say there's 360 million people in the United States. There are at least 360 million devices that can play the regular old radio. So we would have a long way to go just technology-wise to have that many people even that would have access to it, even though we don't have cell phones. But
think of it in terms of still people who are paying for cable versus people who are cord cutters. That's kind of I picture podcast people as cord cutters, where I'm not going to pay for cable. I'm not going to pay for radio anymore. I'm going to do my free podcasts.
Hey, we do have the highest Uverse package here. We like our TV.
There you go.
So yes and no, not really on the Slingshot. What other apps? I think I cut you off after Focus. What do you use? Are you you're a Todoist guy. That's your app, right?
Yeah, for the most part, that's what I use. Trello is another one that I use a lot for because of my whole team at Social Media Examiner uses that. And that's really cool. What's really cool, it ultimately, when it comes to a task management app, again, it doesn't really matter which one you pick as long as you use it.
Right.
As long as you keep using it. So Trello is one where there's a bunch of different things on there, and you check them off, and then you can move them over. It's like having a giant whiteboard up on your wall, but team members digitally can come in and do stuff all across it. And I kind of wish I had a whiteboard here. I'm very pen and paper person here. I will do that. I will use digital as my hardcore, that's where my stuff is that I receive and then process. But then this morning, or actually rather last night, I get out the little legal pad thing and I will write it all down off my calendar and my meetings today. This one's on there, and then as the day goes, I cross the stuff off, and it just feels good. I'd rather see it and feel it and know right where I'm at versus out of sight, out of mind that a lot of the digital tools give you. You know what I mean? Like if I'm out and about and I'm like, oh, I got to remember to such and such, and I do that on my phone. If I don't have that set to like annoy me to death later, I won't do it. So I'm better off capturing it a different way.
What do you think of Asana? That's what I use.
Asana's similar to Trello. So Asana's good. Asana's good. Yeah. I mean, there are people who swear by it. And again, I'm not going to dig any of them and say, no, that one's crap, because if it helps you, great. And yeah. I've tried a bunch. I've tried most of them, in fact. And what I've gotten down to is for the most part, I just need one to capture for me personally. And then I need a separate one for everybody else. That's like a team one that I connect with. And then I use my pen and paper.
For me, it's I judge most apps and whether or not I'm going to use them, whether or not I can use them on my computer, Windows system, and on my phone. If it's one and not the other, it doesn't matter which one it is. I'm not going to use it because I need to be able to go and pull my phone out of my pocket, add something to my list, and pull it up on my computer and check it off. Yeah,
you got to be able to sync. And most of them will do that these days. So it really doesn't make much difference. Slack is good too. I don't know who else.
I was going to ask you that about Slack. What are your thoughts on that? It was requested some of the members had asked if there was a way to kind of catalog or keep similar conversations together. Like if we were talking about productivity apps, being able to pull up that chain and then different podcasts we listen to or something in another chain. Is Slack a good tool for that?
That would be good. Yeah. What it does is it's not the email killer. It's a way to streamline having to have as many emails is what it is. Have you tried it before? Have you tried Slack at all?
I've got my own account. I've been invited to a handful of accounts. Okay. I think I've logged in a total of 3 times.
Yeah. I've got my one. I've got like 4 or 5 different Slack groups that I'm part of. One is, again, for work. One is for a mastermind that I'm in. And then one for the Blab that I'm part of weekly. One for the podcast network that I'm on. And so what's cool is to be able to have, like if I were to open up my podcast, here's one of the cool things. I'll say this. In my mastermind, there's a channel called Retweets. And if you have done something really cool and you'd love the rest of the group to know about it and share that across all social channels, you just take your link and you drop it in there. And we all feel free to do that. That's pretty cool. You know, you can have as many different topical channels inside of a Slack group. And I like it. We have one for work that's called customer service. We have another one where it's private. It's just me and this other guy. And we go back and forth and shoot each other stuff. And what's fun is you can do GIFs in there too. So sometimes it's like, anyway, we're messing around, but it's fun. I mean, I'll say this with that one person specifically, we're talking hundreds of emails less that I have to do anything with because I can shoot back and forth. It's like, group IM in some ways.
Is it reducing work or just shifting it from the inbox to web chat?
It's both factors. It's not just moving out of the inbox into another inbox that helps it, because then that means that your email's not getting bogged down with those conversations, but also those conversations can happen quicker and with less explanation. In other words, it's like I don't have to type 3 paragraphs and then say, what do you think? I can say, hey, so-and-so, whatchamacallit about this thing. What do you guys think? And it's because it's threaded and it's not each individual email, it helps. I mean, I don't know. You have to really dive in and say, okay, let's try it for this one thing, for this one reason, for a certain period of time and see what we think. But okay. I mean, for me, it's great.
Okay. I have nothing against it. It's a matter of time for me to go in and figure it out. I've heard good things. So before we open up to Q&A, which will be when I unmute, give everybody the opportunity to unmute themselves. Couple questions from Rocco. How do we decipher the distractions and this resistance that Stephen Pressfield has mentioned? I'm sure you've read his book. From trying what works and experimenting with failure, How do we know if it's just kind of a fun thing versus this could actually work?
You don't know. It's the simple answer is you don't know, but that doesn't mean it's not worth trying. It's not a waste of time to work on one thing and have it fail if you were practicing, because eventually, either one of those things works or, for example, I didn't podcast about productivity the whole time I've podcasted. I podcasted about other stuff, but I got to be a better podcaster because I was podcasting about all that other stuff, that when it came time to do the productivity podcast, which is the one that took off, I had so much experience podcasting up to that point that then that bled into it. So don't ever look at something you're trying as something that may or may, will this or won't it work? That's, again, you can ask yourself those questions, but it's all part of one long, connected dot to dot forward, So
do you go all in each time, knowing that it might not work?
That's a different story. I think you can't, some things are going to require you to go all in to really test to see whether it's worth it or not. Other things are worth doing, especially if you don't have to go all in on it in order to see if it works.
Can you give us some examples maybe from the Erik J. Fisher background?
Sure. I would say, for example, I knew when I was going to start the show, the Beyond the To-Do List show, that I was going all in on that. Like, I wasn't just going to see if it worked. I was going to carry it out. I wrote down 52 names of people that I was going to talk to for a year, knowing I wasn't going to get all of them, but knowing that was a good start, and I was committing to do it for a year. So maybe that's the thing. Maybe it's not necessarily the going all in, because again, that means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Some people would say going all in means, all right, I'll see you in a month, husband, wife, I'm going out to the shed to build this thing. That's not going all in. That's going all out. Like, that's going, like, that's anyway, you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
The other so it's probably more likely that people mean, how long do I give this thing? And again, Seth Godin's got a book all about that called The Dip. So sometimes you can't see it, but others can if they look at it from outside and say, if you push past this inflection point where it feels like it's not working, but if you just did this one other thing, it comes back up and works. Unfortunately, it's a very circumstantial answer.
Fair enough. I just see, I was going through, I installed this plugin on my site called, I don't know, it's Broken Link Checker, I think it was. Mm-hmm. And I was looking at links from my site to other sites that had we're now getting 404 errors. They're not working. And there was a handful down at the very bottom of where I'd linked to other blogs within the last couple of years, and people had stopped. They didn't, they're just done. No more domain renewal, no more hosting account. They just quit. And I've talked time and time again about, it was about 80 blog posts before I felt comfortable writing. It was 20 podcast episodes before I felt like I didn't suck. 40 before I thought I was all right. 60 before I felt like I'd hit my groove. And I'm at 98 published right now. But people give up. I mean, if you don't enjoy it, just stop anyway. But
right. Well, the statistic that most podcasts don't make it past the 7th episode, and if you can plan to get past that, and that's 7 consecutive weeks. So here, that's the key piece right there. Is again, it's still that time period. It's not a mad flurry rush of activity at the very beginning and then fade away. It's how much time, how long are you willing to stick with something? And if you think you can't, I mean, again, if you can't see yourself doing it for a year, if you can't plan out doing a whole year's worth of shows topically, and that's where I got the idea from, was Daniel J. Lewis. When he started his Audacity to Podcast show, he said he had written down, maybe not in order, but he had written down a full year's worth of possible show ideas. And by that he knew, okay, this has legs. I'm going to keep going with this. I'm starting now, and I'm just going to kind of reorder stuff. So that's where I took that idea from for me with guests. So
okay, I've got one more question from Rocco, and then I have a completely selfish question that I want to ask you. Rocco says, what point, and how do you know when you've gotten there, when you transition from the guy who interviews experts to becoming the expert yourself?
When people are asking you on their podcast to talk about that thing as the expert.
Can you expedite that process, or is it sit back?
Yes, you can. I'll say this. When I started it, I wasn't going after being the expert. I was going after myself learning from the experts. And that's still going on, to be honest. That's never going to stop. I will still always be a student of productivity and of these people. However, I will say that once I learned enough, about 6 months in, people started to ask me to be on their shows. I could have expedited that by doing more from my own voice without an interview. If I had thrown in a solo show with me, and this is actually what I'm kind of curating, or I've got it in the works right now, where I'm doing a solo show once a month from this point forward in January, where I've just basically stood here in front of the mic and just kind of rambled on a topic that I've already collected notes on. Then it's dictated into the computer. So then I've got that, and I can kind of craft those words, make it almost a blog post, and then go back and record that. And then that way I've got the blog post version and the recorded voice podcast version, and it's me, and it's only me. So then it's me speaking as the authority. You can do that as soon as you're able to do it. Honestly, you can do that before you're ready to do it, and that speeds up the process too.
And I mean, have you ever asked? Yeah, have you ever asked to be on somebody's show, Eric, when you're trying to promote your own expertise? Or I'll own it and say yes.
Yeah. You know what? I probably could get away with it. It's just a touchy subject for me, because sometimes I get the weirdest people asking to be on my show, and that has turned me off so much to asking for myself to be on someone else's show. I don't know. It's interesting.
I have not asked to be on somebody's show necessarily, but I have said, hey, this is my story. I think it might help your audience who might be going through the same things, who, the end result might help them. If you think that would be a good idea, let me know. And that's how I usually approach that. And when, go ahead.
And that's a better way to do it. Like, the way that I get it is, hey, I'd like to pitch me being on your show. Here's why. I'm already tuned out after that first sentence.
Yeah, I've gotten those, and they're hard to differentiate real people from like some fake person that's just blasting everyone under the sun. So any way that you can make sure that you're a real person out there is a good idea. Here's my question to you, Eric. I emailed my list over the last few days about what I want to do with my show next. And I mentioned this at the very beginning, what I want to do, how I want to do it, how I can move the needle for people and help them answer questions. One of the things that I want to do is I would like to build my coaching business. If I can get a handful or two more clients, that'll put me over 6 figures. It'll be more money than I was ever making at Dell, which would be fantastic. All those wonderful things. I am thinking, and I don't know if anybody is doing this, doing each episode as a free coaching call for people where they would volunteer. We would do it, and it would be totally transparent. Mm-hmm. They would, just like an interview, the guest would get help. The listener would see how things are done, and they would get inspiration in their problems and those kinds of things, just like an interview. And then I would also be showcasing what I would like to think, and my past clients would hopefully like to think, is some talent. Do you think that's a good idea, or is that self-serving? What are your thoughts on that?
That's not a bad idea. I know I don't know who it is, but I know a guy in my mastermind was telling us about somebody basically doing something very similar to that, where they are a coach like that, a business coach, and they hit record and they do the whole call, and then near the end, he's like, "Man, this turned out really well. Do you mind if I put this out as my podcast?" Well, I think that I don't know if it's true or not that he says that at the end, that he's really asking for permission there at the end. He's probably already gotten it. Otherwise, anyway, whatever. But I think doing that with that intention, I think then it's the key piece here is how do you get somebody who knows. I don't see anything wrong with that. I think, hey, if it showcases you being able to do it. It showcases what kind of call they're going to get. Mm-hmm. It's always up to you, how much. I think the thing to walk the line of is how confidential can you be then sometimes, or how open they will be if they know it's going to go out as a show.
And I think the way that would be done, at least on how I would do that, is say, well, can you leave that part out? And I would never argue that fact, because I would want people to be open, but I do recognize that it would kind of be somewhat sensitive, and I would want people to be open. And my hesitation with that idea is I think that would be really good for me in a business standpoint, and I agree, and most people would agree. I know Ray Edwards has said this: your podcast should be a marketing tool to drive towards something else, and so that would work for me. I just wouldn't want that to come across as Ellery focused. So I thought I would ask.
Yeah. And again, you could make that mistake, but I think it's all in how you handle it. So
yeah, I would want to be upfront and everything like that. Erik, thank you for hanging out with me and my members today. If you guys liked this call and you joined because this was more of a public call than just to members only, make sure you go to members.ellerywells.com. If you go to /30 FOR1, you can get a whole month for just $1. Erik, again, thank you for hanging out with us. And until I see you again in person, it's been great chatting with you today.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
So before I forget, I want to mention something to you about Slack. If you have thought about implementing Slack, you go to slack.com, whatever, you can find it. It's probably free you can get started for free. And I'm still on a free plan. That's beside the point. If you go to slack.com, you can see what I'm talking about. But one thing that I've discovered is after we went in with after this call and having a few more calls, you know me, I love to do my research and test and probably get too many different opinions. Well, early in 2016 here, we decided, my mastermind members, my membership site, no, not membership site, my masterminds and coaching clients, current and past, we decided to implement Slack. We've up until middle of February, we were using Facebook. We have a private group, and we were all in there chatting and sharing things, and it was going really well. But one of the things that I thought would be nice is to implement something where we would be able to have conversations based on category. So if we were talking about email marketing, we could have a separate channel all about email marketing, tools, the things we use, blah, 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 and have a separate channel for maybe random things or conversations about conferences. And we decided to use Slack. And throughout the month of March, and here we are almost at the very end here, March 2016, we've been using Slack almost exclusively. And hopefully this next little bit will add an extreme amount of value to you and your business if you are considering Slack. If not, skip ahead, 30, 60, 90 seconds, something like that. But here's what I noticed about using Slack. It killed the Facebook group, We can revive it again. But almost no interaction was happening on Facebook anymore because I asked everybody to go all in. Let's give it our best shot and see if we really like Slack. If we go all in, move all of our comments over there, how will we like it? Let's give it a fair shot. Here, after using it almost a month, here's what I have found. The social interaction total overall between groups and between groups and within groups has almost completely vanished. Yes, there are topical discussions in Slack. We've got 10 or 12, maybe 15 different channels. I created a channel for, welcome, start here. We got a blogging channel, books to read, talking about books to read, what's on our reading list, how to write books, tips for book writing, conference talks, resources for crowdfunding, email marketing, Facebook ads, landing pages, sales funnels, tips for Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, all kinds of social media, tips, tools, and tricks. WordPress, it's a great way to categorize that information. However, again, what we noticed, and I don't know if I noticed this myself, but whenever I asked my guys, my clients, my members, what they thought of it, they pointed out to me, our social interaction has almost completely gone away. And I think I'm playing with the idea of moving it all back to Facebook. Because it's not worth the decline or elimination of the social interaction to have things listed by topic. It's just not worth it for me. It may be worth it for you and your business, but Slack is a great business-only tool. But that's not the reason why I created the Facebook group in the first place. We have a lot of business discussions in our coaching calls and in our mastermind calls. It's about the community. I want to have and create, build, and grow a community around this idea of entrepreneurship. Like we talked about in the last episode, and in number 99, I want to create this culture of entrepreneurship. And when we moved to Slack, that culture died. And I hope you hear my somewhat frustration, but my passion behind that, because this was a big decision. And I think even after all of the praise and the positive things that have come out of, or all of the good talk that I've heard about using Slack, and honestly, it did almost exactly what I wanted it to do, but I didn't see the side effect that it would. Again, it's not beyond repair or rebuilding, but it almost completely destroys any social interaction between members. And I just wanted to point that out. Because Slack and its implementation have been a big thing for me over the last few months, and that group dynamic is a big part of the coaching programs that I offer and the members mastermind programs that I offer. Being able to not only have that small group interaction, but being able to access a larger group of people who are like-minded. So it's been a big deal for me. If you're one of my mastermind clients or coaching clients, I'd love to hear your feedback. I'm sure we'll talk about it in the coming weeks. But that's where I am right now, shutting down and moving everything back over to Facebook to boost that social interaction, even though we might sacrifice some of that convenience in topical discussion. It's just it's too big of a change right now, and I think we're going to go back. Anyway, if you are on Snapchat, I want you to go over to your phone. I want you to open up the app right now. It shouldn't stop playback, anything like that. I want you to open up your Snapchat. I'm going to do it right here. And once that yellow screen loads, I want you to swipe down, and then I want you to go to Add Friends right here. It's that middle button. And I want you to add by username. I want you to search for Ellery Wells, as in no space, ELLORYWELLS. And for those of you in the cheap seats, ELL, I'm just kidding, ElleryWells.com. You probably know how to spell it right now. Sorry, not .com. That's just a habit. Search for Ellery Wells in Snapchat. I share all kinds of stuff. I share mostly behind the scenes, fun kind of things. You know what? I'm going to snap one right here. And I'm recording the podcast right now. If you're following me on Snapchat right now, you'll see this. If you're listening to the podcast, you will see this later. And I just did a Snapchat right there. It's pretty cool. Oh, see, it just replayed. Anyway, let's get social. Let's have some interaction. Let's create this culture of entrepreneurship. Let's build something together. Let's do something amazing together. Think collaboration instead of competition. It's been 100 episodes of this show, guys. It has been 100. That's it's over 100 hours. Think about where you could drive in 100 hours and listen to the show. It's been a journey. And it is just beginning. We are making a pivot here. I'm going to, if you're looking through your news feed or your iTunes feed or Stitcher feed, you're going to see a kind of credits, a thank you episode after this before we start over with show number 1 of the Ellery Wells Show. And I'm really excited to that. I wouldn't have been able to do it for you, except for you, because if I would have logged in, honestly, if I'd logged into iTunes and episode 99 hadn't done all that well, if it had been kind of a flop, I would have shown up. I would have been here. You'd be hearing this. You'd still have the Ellery Wells Show because I have committed to that. I've stated that goal and I've said what I'm doing. However, I don't know if I would have as much gusto and energy behind it. And if it doesn't sound like I have a whole lot of energy right now, it's almost 5 o'clock in the afternoon of a very long day, and I was up late playing The Division on PlayStation last night. So I'm a little bit tired, and it's been a long day, and it's been quite a long time since I've had any caffeine. So, but the passion is here. I may sound tired, but the passion is here. And if I hadn't have been able to log into iTunes and see that you guys have listened, I would probably sound kind of blah because the interaction with listeners like you makes it all worth it. It sounds dumb, doesn't it? It sounds corny. It's like all those things that you would hear on PBS when they're asking for donations. This show is only capable of being here with you. But that's the truth. I mean, if you've done anything cool in your life, and I know you have, it's getting that feedback from the people you care about and the people you're producing that content for or putting on a show for. You know what I'm talking about. Anyway, I'm going to wrap it up today. This is episode 100 of the Empowered Podcast. I am your gracious and thankful host, Ellery Wells. Check out the show notes for this page if you want to go to empoweredpodcast.com/100/100. You can find the show notes and the links to what Erik and I talked about today. If you want to try out Slack, there's a link right there. It's not an affiliate link, but I think it's worth trying. Figure out how to build the life that you want. Begin with the end in mind and work backward. And build the work-life balance that you want. And go do something awesome, guys. I'm proud of you. I'm here with you. And if you need anything, please feel free to reach out and let me know. Have an awesome day. I love that music.